Good afternoon, dear students. Today, as part of elective paper, I explain Matthew Arnold's The Study of Poetry. Matthew Arnold is one of the greatest critics of Victorian age, having very high reputation. And his essay, The Study of Poetry, deals with different aspects, including the role of poetry, the real estimate of poetry, and a classic poet. Study of poetry can be divided into three categories. First part indicates the role of poetry, second, the real estimate of poetry, and third one, a classic poet. In his essay, Arnold clearly discusses various aspects of criticism. His views have been widely accepted and followed, and he is known for adopting touchstone method to compare writers with the poetry of great writers. Then, according to Arnold, poetry is a criticism of life. So this statement is, clear indication of his analytical mind on literary works. According to Matthew Arnold, poetry is a criticism of life, and such criticism is based upon the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. Poetic truth and poetic beauty. Poetry contains the truth. When it contains the truth, it means it has its impact. It shows its deviation between truth and false. That is the reason he calls it criticism. Poetry is criticism of life. So our flaws are known very well. As time passes and when other supports fail upon outrage, we'll find its consolation and stay on poetry. So one finds a consolation in poetry. While reading poetry, poetry soothes your heart, heals your mental tortures, and provides you aesthetic pleasure. That's why he gives a statement that the best poetry will be found to have power of sustaining and delighting as. So poetry not only delights, it brings out instructions to our life. It instructs and delights. So the ways of life are given in the form of instructions. At the same time, aesthetic pleasure and delight can be found in poetry. If people find pleasure and instructions in the poetry, that can be termed as true poetry and realistic poetry. If we find that kind of poetry, it is nothing but a criticism of life. Then it is in the light of the fact that poetry can save delight and support making, and one should be careful enough to judge poetry by means of real estimate. So one should be very careful while judging the poetry. We need to have broad outlook on life, men and matters. Then we have the ability to judge poetry on its merits. Then two obstacles for a real estimate. There are two obstacles for a real estimate of poetry. One is historic estimate, and another is personal estimate, which leads to a wrong estimate of poetry. So historic and the second, personal estimate. These are the two estimates which can lead to wrong notions. So historical estimate as well as personal estimate are not the criteria to estimate the reality in the poetry or fact in the poetry or value of poetry. Then Arnold proposes a new method. Arnold, in his study of poetry, proposes a new kind of judging poetry that is called the touchstone method. So touchstone is a black stone which tests the purity of gold. Touchstone is a way of testing the purity of gold. In the same way, same method can be applied to judging the poetry. So here he proposes a new kind of judging poetry that is called the touchstone method. So touchstone in real sense, it is a kind of stone which tests the purity and value of the gold. So the same method can be applied to poetry to know the greatness of poetry, real worth of the poet, as well as content it contains. The best lines and expressions of great, the best lines expressions, the great lines and the best expressions of the previous writers can be taken into consideration while judging a poem. You must keep in mind the immortal lines and immortal expressions of previous writers. Then we can easily juxtapose the present lines with the past so as to know what type of poetry the present poem has got or contains. The best lines of Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton. The best lines of Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton can be in the poems of others. Literature, Shakespeare, Dante, Homer, all each work great letters and the expressions of writers can be in consideration by judging the poems of other writers while evaluating the works of other writers. The previous great writers, Homer, compare the works of the present with the past writers. Subjects matter. Judging work of art while judging a poem, you must consider what is its contained, what is its intention, what is its subject matter. We will look into consideration. Then, manner and style, subject matter of the poem, and the manner in which it is expressed, the question of words, style of the author, must poetry is subject matter, the manner in which it is explained, the style, these three elements are the key elements. One work of art or poem, we must bear in mind these three aspects. What is the subject of the poem? How does it end? The style of the poet. When you consider these three things, it is easy for us to judge a poem. Without concentrating on these three aspects, we cannot, judge a poem. So to judge a poem, these elements are key factors. Then, in other words, touchstone method is a comparative method. In other sense, the method called touchstone, invented by Matthew Arnold, is a clear indication of comparative method. So comparative method is necessary to evaluate a poem. To evaluate a poem, to give a strength to the poem, to pass comments on the poem, what is required is comparative method is required. The present work should be compared with the past work, and we need to find out whether the present work contains merits or demerits, or whether the present work maintains the standards of the previous writers or not. So if the present poem competes with the past writers and possesses high qualities, then we can easily call it a high class of poem or poem of sustainable value. So judging a work of art is not as easy as we think, but judging a work of art is quite complex work. So when you want to do a complex work, you must keep in mind certain aspects: the subject matter, the manner in which it is explained, and the style of the art. Then we need to adopt touchstone method while comparing these elements with the elements of the past writers. When the present work surpasses, then the past elements are the elements available in the great writers, then we can call it a great poem. So without following these methods, you cannot come to a conclusion that this poem is better than that one. So touchstone method is a method by which we can compare a work of art with another work of art by keeping in mind the great and immortal writers like Shakespeare, Dante, Homer, and Milton. So these are the views expressed in the second part of the study of poetry essay. Then, so according to Arnold, a poet should have two qualities of higher truth and high seriousness, and a style that has accent, diction, and movement. So the poet must keep in mind while writing a poem what is high truth. So the poem should contain a moral message or immortal truth. Then high seriousness, with ample, with ample examples, you must convey the truth to its readers. Then style. So the style of author should not be the same. The content may be the same, but the expression should be different. The style of one author should differ from other author in expressing higher truth. Diction and movement. Diction, as you know very well, the credibility of the poem or the worth of the poem or the content of the poem gets more value. It gets enriched with the proper selection of words. So your thought must be in accordance with the selection of the words. So diction is very important, and the movement of the lines. So proper diction should be followed. Appropriate diction should be selected to weave a poem in such a way that it doesn't appear inferior to the works of other writers. Then he is a classic poet. So one who adopts classic ways of writing, certainly his poem becomes a classic poem and he is considered as a classic poet. So adhering to the principles of previous writers or the doctrines of ancient writers while writing a work of art is necessary for a writer so as to make himself as a classic poet and so as to, make his work a classical work or a classical poem. So according to Arnold, a poet needs to follow a canons of ancient writers and he must adopt his own way of diction and he must show high truth and high seriousness while writing a poem. Following Aristotle, Arnold says that the best poetry should have higher truth and higher seriousness. So Arnold, strictly adhering to the norms of Aristotle, says a poem should contain higher truth and higher seriousness. These two aspects or elements are necessary for every poem so as to survive for a longer period. If higher truth and higher seriousness are missed in a poem, it cannot be considered as a classic poem. So one has to adhere to the norms or principles of ancient writers so as to make the work sustain for a longer period. Everything depends on the reality of poet's classic character. So everything depends on poet's tendency to adopt the previous canons. So the poet's understanding of the subjects, poet's previous knowledge of ancient writers is primarily responsible for the creation of a good work of art. So a poet should have a broader mind and has to comprehend the norms, or he has to understand the basic meaning of poetry, and he must also understand the essence of poetry. Then only he can produce a classic poem. Without having prior knowledge, without having broader outlook on the writings of ancient writers or classical writers, one cannot produce a great poem. If he is a dubious classic, let us explore him. So one cannot be, an excellent writer without having knowledge of the great writers. Arnold says that Chaucer's poetry lacks high seriousness. Even, Arnold passes comment on Chaucer, who is known as the father of English literature. He also says that Chaucer has not maintained high seriousness in his poetry. Arnold judges the works of Geoffrey Chaucer and says his works doesn't have his works do not have high seriousness. And according to Matthew Arnold, Dryden and Pope are not classics. they are classics of prose. So even Dryden and Pope are not classical poets, but they are classical prose writers. So while I mean judging different authors of different periods, Arnold doesn't hesitate to pass comments, and he says Chaucer does not have high seriousness, and he also says that Dryden and Pope are not classical poets, and they are only classical prose writers. Only Thomas Gray is accepted as a classic poet by Arnold. So the writer Thomas Gray is the only poet who is accepted by Arnold, and Arnold says Thomas Gray is the only writer who strictly adhered to the norms of ancient writers and can be considered as a classic poet. So in the opinion of Matthew Arnold, there is only one classic poet whose poetry contains higher truth and higher seriousness is none other than Thomas Gray. Gray was Greek in spirit because Thomas Gray was Greek in spirit. So Thomas Gray adopted the methods of ancient writers, classical writers, and he was much inspired by their writings, and he has shown that spirit, that enthusiasm, that motivation in his poetry. In the course of his estimate of different poets from historical point of view, Arnold compares and contrasts a few poets. So while in the course of his estimates of different poets, so while estimating different poets belonging to different ages, from historical perspective or from historical point of view, Arnold compares and contrasts. So Arnold does two things in his essay. He compares and at the same time contrasts. He finds similarity among the writers. He finds contrasting things among the poets. So both contrasting things and as well as similar things are brought to our notice while judging the works of different poets. He does not make any estimate of William Shakespeare and John Milton. So while analyzing the works of different writers, Matthew Arnold spared Shakespeare and John Milton. He has not touched them well. They are already acknowledged as masters and classics by successive generations. So he has not made any comments on writings of Shakespeare and Milton because successive generations have applauded the works of Shakespeare and Milton. So for many centuries, from 5th century, from 14th century to even today, we find people continue to applaud, continue to praise, continue to shower their appreciation on Shakespeare and Milton. So what happened, Arnold has not touched them as he felt that their works are nearly classical works. Thus we find Arnold as a Victorian moralist. One more important aspect we come to know from this essay, that Matthew Arnold is a Victorian moralist. So he always believed in moral things and ethical values rather than, things which give instant pleasure. And a critic of high standards. So he is a critic of high standard. He doesn't judge the works through malice. He doesn't judge the work having a negative opinion on anyone. He brings out the facts. He judges genuinely. His judgment is above others. So he keeps so many things in his mind while judging the work of arts. And he says the best poetry will be found to have power of forming, sustaining, and delighting as nothing else. So a great classical work will continue to enjoy its influence on human thinking. It lives forever. So a poem which has, ancient elements will certainly have its own impact or influence on human beings, and it sustains for many generations. Its impact is more on many generations. It doesn't die because it has some truth in it. It has some high seriousness. It has some morality. So a work of high seriousness, a work of great value will have, everlasting impact or influence on the thinking of the people. So we see so many critics in English literature, but Matthew Arnold's views on poetry is really great, and they are matchless, and they provide an ample opportunity for us to value poetry as per the standards established by Matthew Arnold. So this is about Matthew Arnold's study of poetry. Thank you.